Alright guys, welcome to Window Tint Warriors, and in this video I'm going to show you how to shrink and install reverse roll method, the sunroof on a Tesla Model Y. Now in the previous video, I'm going to put the link in the description if you haven't seen it. I showed you how to take down the whole entire headliner on this Tesla Model Y, including the A-pillars and the whole top, just to make installation so much easier. It's very easy to do. Once you do it once, it's like clockwork. So check it out quick. That's what we're working with. Now that we have the headliner completely removed, we're going to move the seats all the way forward because we're going to be installing this from the back seat. Makes it a lot easier to do it from there. So we'll do a little bit of inside prep. We're going to put the dryer sheet on the outside so we can shrink it, and then we'll lay the film out, shrink it, and install it. What I like to do is take a large dashboard towel, which we sell on windowtintsupplies.com, and I'll take a couple of these magnets, which are used for wrapping. I'll show you what I do with those on the inside. So what we're going to do with these is we're going to protect the water from dripping down from here onto anything. So we're going to take the towel long ways, use our first magnet, and get this stuck on the metal up here. This way nothing gets wet on the dashboard, and we don't have to worry about any of the electronics getting wet up here as well, because these are the antenna modules that are up on the roof, is what it looks like. So we have that all covered. We have a nice open area to work with, no headliner in the way, nothing in the way. It's going to be very easy. So I've already wiped the top clean. We washed this car before we were doing this. So I'm just going to put the dryer sheet on the outside, and then we're going to use a pre-cut tint kit to do this sunroof. So I'm going to show you guys how to shrink that exactly. If you are doing this with bulk material, just make sure that you have a 60-inch roll. I'm going to roll that sideways, and we're going to have to shrink sideways as well. All right, now while the dryer sheet dries, we're gonna do the inside prep with just a light scrub pad, white non-score pad, and the soapy water solution, and our blue huck towel, just to make sure there's no contaminants on the sunroof on the inside before we install it. Let's go ahead with a light mist and clean away. The main key here is listening for any contaminants that are really stuck to the glass that we might have to raise the blade off. It does happen even on newer cars. I know in the front there was a little something up here, and we got that off with the scrub pad. All good. Wipe it down. Now all we have to do is wait for that dryer sheet to dry, and then we can move forward. All right, now that we have the dryer sheet on the window and it's all dry, we're gonna grab the pre-cut, lay it out, and we'll get to shrinking. If you have the pre-cut, the wider portion is gonna be on the front, shorter or tighter on the back, because it is bigger on the front than the back. Roll this up. We're doing 5% over the factory tinted sunroof, which is going to bring it down to about 1 or 2% visibility overall. So since this is a 60-inch roll cut long ways, we're going to have to shrink this film sideways. It doesn't have to be lined up exactly where it's going to be installed, but I like to get it close to it just to get as perfect of a shrink as possible. So when you lay out a big piece of film like this, it's kind of like the Model 3 rear window, but higher up and a little bit more annoying because you got to go up here to shrink it. I'm going to mount it in the center, split it right down the center, use the camera as a reference as the center, and get that sideways H pattern going down the back. Split our fingers up and get to shrinking. So I'm going to start tackling this just by shrinking it and splitting the fingers with my fingers without even pushing it. I want to get the majority of it shrunk before I start pushing, to avoid any unnecessary tension that you can create if you prematurely push the film down. So you can see I'm just shrinking it and splitting it as I go. Not trying to go too far on one side. I want to do it nice and even. So I'm going to get down to about here and then go and jump onto the back. Now, if you're not 6 foot, you're definitely going to need a step stool or to step up on the side. And this is all exactly like the Model 3 rear window, shrinking sideways. It's a very long process, and just kind of get the idea of this. I'm going to shrink it down to here, and then we'll jump right back to it, and I'll show you guys how to finalize the shrink without damaging it, causing any creases. And when you're on the sides, you do want to shrink it sideways, but you don't want to shrink it towards the front because the film will not shrink that way. So you want to make sure you keep your H pattern in place and get that side to lay down. can even, as you get, I'm about 80% done here. Let me finish on the back and then I'll show you guys how to push this down and work forward from there. All right, so now that I have this shrunk but not pushed, I'm gonna have to push this to work all of this unreleased or unlaid tension down to this edge so that we can shrink the rest of it. So to start working with the felt card as if you were shrinking it. I don't like to push it as I'm shrinking it on this big piece because you can push tension in areas that you don't want them to be. So if you just split it with your fingers as you're shrinking it, it'll lay where it wants to lay or where it needs to lay, and then you can attend to the rest later. So we're only gonna push it up to the tips of these fingers, and then we're gonna continue doing the shrink. This is all nicely laid down. We can move forward with the shrinking of these sides. Just working slow and getting that corner laid down. Once that corner's laid down, you really don't have to worry about it anymore. It won't go sideways on you. If you start to get sideways fingers, you don't want to shrink that. You want to push that down and make sure it's laid. And that's where the end gets a little bit more complicated because you can start getting the film really hot. It'll start sticking to the dryer sheet. You just got to make sure you split it and push it as needed. If it ever goes sideways, you want to push it or split it down the middle. I'm pretty much going to finish the front and then I'll go back to the back. You can see I still have the extra material around. So you have the cut and then the extra material that we didn't weed off yet. I like to leave that on there because the release liner will burn faster than the tint. So I leave the tint on there so that it doesn't burn. We got the front portion done. We'll do the back portion and then the other side I'm just gonna do really quick. Bam. Once the whole piece of film is shrunk, remember we still have that release liner on there. So we're gonna do two things here. I'm gonna spray water under the film, between the film and the glass. That's gonna remove any contaminants as well as give us a wet check of the film to make sure it's properly shrunk. And at the same time, we're gonna release or remove that extra weeded material from the liner so that we're just left with the liner and the actual film that's going on the glass. So we'll go ahead and lift the film up, spray soapy water underneath it, a generous amount so there's no dry spots. Lay it back down and do the same thing for the front. Go to the other side. We'll pull this extra material off and wrap it around. Garbage. Now that we have the film loose on the top of the window, we're doing a couple things here. We're cooling the glass down with the water because we don't want it to be too warm when we're installing it. And we're able to remount it back into place as if we're gonna shrink it or as if we're shrinking it. And we're gonna be able to see and make sure that the shrink that we did is nice and precise. You can see I'm working it with my hands before I squeegee it to make sure there's no dry spots. So we don't get any creases in this very hard to shrink window. The last thing you want to do is have to redo it. Squeegee all that water. We have no fingers on this side popping up, but we do have one on the other side that'll shrink really quick. That's the whole point of a wet check. See right here. Get that up really quick and shrink it out. We've got a perfectly shrunk sunroof for a Model Y. Now we're gonna reverse roll this. So we're gonna reverse roll it up on top of the sunroof. And we're gonna use a 3/4 inch PVC pipe to roll it on top of or onto to give us support when we're reverse rolling it onto the window. So first we have to release the liner, spray soapy water between the film and the release liner, and then put the liner back down, and then we'll go ahead and roll it up. So we'll pull the liner. I like to pull it from the center. And since we squeegeed the whole liner, it's nice and clean, so we don't have to worry about too much contaminants. And make sure you get an adequate amount of soapy water between that film and the liner. Lay that down. work out any of the air pockets. It's not too important, but the more flat it is, the better. Do the same thing, grab the center. Make sure you have enough soapy water in your bottle. Last thing you want to do is run out during this. No dry spots. Go ahead and lay this down without touching the liner side that's going to be touching the film. That will contaminate it. Now when we install this, we're going to be working from front to back. So when we roll this up, we're going to roll it up from back to front because we want to start with the front, so we want the front to be on the end. So we'll grab our pipe, 3/4 inch PVC. It's about 35 to 40 inches. Make sure it's nice and clean. Start by lifting the film up with the liner just to release it from the back. Lay it on top. And I did this on the Model 3 video, so if you want to watch it in a different perspective, watch that Model 3 rear window video. Get it started on there nice and evenly. Make sure to get no hiccups in this. Nice and tight start. And once you get it about a quarter of the way, I like to pull it off, nice and fluently come down, and roll it up the rest of the way. Now at this point, I'll put this to the side after I roll it up. I'll clean the dryer sheet off the back window or off the top of the window. And I'll do a squeegee spray on the inside, and then I'll grab this and we can go ahead with the installation. So when you put this down, you want to put it down somewhere where it's not going to unroll and where it's not going to damage the film. So that's good right there. We'll wipe the dryer sheet off. And before I do the squeegee spray, I'm going to fill my bottle up with water to make sure we don't run out.
That's a cool bottle. Where'd you get that?
Oh, WendletonSupplies.com. Duh. All right. You guys ready to get wet? Because water is gonna be dripping. I have my Blue Max here with the handle. I'm gonna put that to the side. That's gonna be used for installation. We'll start off by doing a light mist on the whole window, just to squeegee off any dust or debris that might be sitting on there. And we'll start from the back and work our way to the front. I like to use a yellow turbo, just because it's nice and soft and it contours with the window. And after each stroke, I wipe with my fingers to make sure I get any debris off of the blade so that it doesn't go back on the glass. Light mist, not too much water because we already have the liner sprayed and the film sprayed, but we also don't want any dry spots. We'll grab the PVC pipe with the film reverse rolled onto it, and we'll get the installation. So we'll come in. Usually I have someone helping me with this, but I can do it by myself. So once the film is reverse rolled, this is the side that's faced forward. Once you start to unroll it, you can see the film is unraveling and the liner is staying on our PVC. I like to roll out about 1.5 feet. I'll hold it with my right hand, and then I'll use my left hand to place the film on the sunroof. This is where it becomes tricky. Once you have it laid all the way across, it won't keep falling down on you. And having as much on the window as possible before you start unrolling it, because then it'll just fall on you. Get it all the way into that front and slowly work your way back, making sure it's staying on the window, because once it starts to come off, it'll just keep going. So we have an air pocket here, lay that down. All right, so I had to have the camera guy give me a hand really quick to lay down this first 2-foot section. It can get very difficult to do it by yourself. It's always good to have an extra hand. And we'll just continue with the reverse roll onto the back half. And we'll let the PVC pipe just fall behind us, making sure that we don't get the film to start falling down, because once it falls, the whole piece will come down. This is why it's really important to remove that headliner first, because it'll be a lot harder if you didn't. So So once the film's on the glass, nice and lined up, we can pull the liner off. Line up the window, or line up the tint overlapping so there's no light gaps. Work out on the air pockets. You don't want to start squeezing this down until you have it perfectly in place, because the last thing you want to do is release it after you've already mounted the glue down. Now we can start squeegeeing this. And once you start squeegeeing, it's going to move. So we'll mount it in the center first. Forward, and back. Check our position again. And then we'll slowly start working it. Work to the sides, just as we shrunk it. Check the position. Once it stops to move, you can push a little harder with the squeegee. Really mount it in place. So the whole idea with the squeegeeing is to squeegee the same way that you shrunk it, because that's the way that the film wants to lay. Once we have that first squeegee done, I'm going to do another pass with the squeegee a little bit harder and push out any fingers that are sticking up with the heat gun, and then this will be all done. Then we can put the headliner back in place. Now any fingers that are popping up on the sides, if you have them, you can just use the gray Lidco card and just shrink them with the heat gun and push them down, and you'll be good to go with this window. And that is how you tint the sunroof on a Tesla Model Y. To put the headliner back in place, just watch that disassembly video, kind of like in reverse, and trace back your steps. I was gonna make a video for reassembly, but it doesn't make sense. I showed you all the steps already. Just pop everything back into place, and good luck. See you guys in the next video.